The massive council chamber stretched endlessly before Commander Park Hyun, as alien voices echoed off crystalline walls. Representatives from dozens of species sat in floating pods, their translators creating a symphony of worried chatter. At the center of it all, a holographic display showed something that made Park's blood boil. Solani families ran screaming across golden wheat fields as massive black ships descended from blood-red skies. The peaceful farmers had no weapons, no defenses. They were simple people who grew food and raised children under twin suns. Now, armored Korthok soldiers dragged them toward cargo holds like sacks of grain. "Play it again," demanded the Thurian ambassador, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence. This was the 3rd time, but Park watched every second. He memorized each face, each cry for help that crossed the void of space to reach this glittering hall of politics. A child no older than 10 reached desperately for his mother as Korthak claws yanked him toward a different transport. The mother's screams needed no translation. Park's hands clenched into fists. The Vrex delegate's breathing mask hissed as he spoke. His species looked like walking trees, but they thought like lawyers. The Korthok Empire filed proper salvage claims 3 cycles ago. The Zalani colony defaulted on their protection payments. Under Section 12 of the Outer Rim Accords, intervention would constitute an act of war. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Aquari delegation bobbed their jellyfish heads. The crystal-based Xerians chimed their approval. Everyone had reasons why helping was impossible. Park stood up slowly, his simple blue uniform looking plain among the elaborate robes and breathing apparatus around him. The talking stopped. Earth was the newest member of the Galactic Council. Most species here had never seen a human before today. "Salvage rights," Park repeated, his voice carrying clearly in the vast space. "You're calling living beings salvage." The Vrex delegates' branches rustled nervously. "The legal terminology is established precedent. We cannot simply ignore interstellar law because we find it distasteful." Park walked to the center of the chamber, his boots clicking against the smooth floor. Every alien I followed him. They'd heard stories about the death world called Earth. Whispers about the violent species that somehow survived on a planet that tried to kill everything living on it. "Then we'll handle it ourselves," he said simply. The chamber fell completely silent. Not even the soft hum of life support systems could be heard. Park looked around at faces that ranged from confused to terrified. These beings had spent thousands of years building a civilization based on committees, treaties, and careful negotiation. They'd never met humans before. The Earth Defense Command Center buzzed with activity as Admiral Kim Soo stared at the star charts spread across her desk. 48 hours ago, she'd been planning routine patrol schedules. Now she was organizing humanity's first independent military operation since joining the Galactic Council. Her aide rushed in with a data pad. "Ma'am, the fleet roster is complete. 17 ships ready for departure." Kim looked at the list and felt something stir in her chest. The righteous anger had been hauling grain between colonies just last week. Captain Lee Min volunteered to strip out the cargo holds and install weapon mounts. His engineering crew worked without sleep to transform their peaceful freighter into a warship down in the shipyard. Lieutenant Colonel Choi Yoon supervised the loading of her Marines onto the assault carrier Iron Will. These weren't regular soldiers. They were volunteers who'd watched the Zalani footage and couldn't sleep afterward. Seeing children dragged from their parents had awakened something primal in every human who witnessed it. "Admiral," came a voice through the quantum communicator. It was Captain Park Dong from the destroyer Steel Rain. "My crew's asking if we're really doing this without council approval." Kim activated the fleet-wide channel. Her voice reached every ship simultaneously across the solar system. "Listen up, everyone. This mission isn't sanctioned by the Galactic Council. We're not going as peacekeepers or diplomats. We're going as humans who refuse to watch innocent people suffer." She paused, looking out at Earth's blue marble hanging in space. Volunteers only. Anyone who wants to transfer out can do so without penalty. No questions asked. The response came back immediately from 17 different ships. Not a single person requested transfer. Cargo handlers volunteered to serve as gunners. Civilian pilots offered their personal ships. Retired veterans came out of retirement, demanding spots on the mission. Captain Yuha, from the science vessel Discovery, had tears in her voice over the comm. "Ma'am, my daughter is the same age as those Zilani kids in the footage. We're going in the Marine barracks." Aboard Iron Will, Colonel Choi watched her soldiers check their equipment one final time. These men and women had signed up to protect humanity's colonies. Now they were volunteering to protect strangers on the other side of the galaxy. "Why are we doing this?" asked a young private. Sergeant Lim Jae looked up from cleaning his rifle. "Because nobody else will. Because those could be our families screaming for help." Within 6 hours, the fleet was ready. 17 ships filled with humans who'd rather break interstellar law than watch children suffer. They'd never fought aliens before, but they carried something the galaxy had forgotten: the willingness to risk everything for strangers. The stars shifted suddenly as 17 human ships tore through hyperspace and emerged at the edge of Zilani space. Admiral Kim Soo gripped her command chair as the tactical display lit up with hostile contacts. What she saw made her stomach turn. Massive Korthok ships hung in orbit around the peaceful farming world like black spiders. Smaller transport vessels moved between the planet's surface and the waiting slave ships in a steady, horrifying rhythm. They weren't even trying to hide what they were doing. Captain Jiang Wu's stealth ship Silent Hunter had arrived hours earlier to scout the situation. His voice crackled over the secure channel. "Admiral, they've got the planet locked down tight. 12 combat vessels, 20 transport ships. They're running this like a business operation." On the bridge of the Silent Hunter, Ensign Park G stared at his sensor readouts with growing horror. The numbers kept changing as more civilians were loaded into cargo holds designed for grain and livestock. "Sir, another transport just launched from the southern continent. I'm reading life signs for approximately 200 Zilani aboard." Through the ship's observation deck, they could see the transports rising from the planet's surface. Each one carried families who'd been farming these fields for generations. Parents clutching children, elderly couples torn from their homes, young adults who'd never known violence until today. Captain Li Min aboard the converted freighter, Righteous Anger watched the tactical display update in real time. His ship had been carrying medicine to frontier colonies just 3 days ago. Now his cargo holds held missiles instead of medical supplies. "This is wrong," muttered his weapons officer, Lieutenant Cho Bin. "They're treating people like cargo." The Korthok fleet moved with mechanical precision. They'd done this before, many times. Their ships positioned themselves efficiently to maximize the flow of prisoners while maintaining defensive formations. To them, this was just another successful raid on a defenseless world. Admiral Kim opened a channel to all ships. Her voice carried the weight of humanity's decision across the void. Every captain, every crew member, every Marine listened as she spoke words that would echo through galactic history. "All ships, weapons free. Save them all." The human fleet surged forward, like hunting wolves. The Steel Rain and Thunderstrike moved to flank the Korthok formation, while the Iron Will prepared to launch its Marines. Captain Yuha's science ship Discovery began jamming enemy communications. The Korthok had expected to finish their harvest unopposed. Instead, they found themselves facing creatures from a death world who refused to let innocent people suffer. The slavers were about to learn why the galaxy whispered about humans in dark corners. The battle for Zilani space had begun. The Korthok fleet commander, Grixtel, had raided 17 worlds in the past year. He knew how these encounters usually went. Local defense forces would fire a few desperate shots before retreating or surrendering. Sometimes a neighboring system would send a patrol ship to investigate, only to flee when they saw his superior numbers. But as human ships charged toward his formation, something felt different. These weren't the careful, committee-driven forces he'd faced before. They moved with predatory purpose, spreading out to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. Captain Oh-sung gripped his command chair aboard the destroyer Hammerfall as they closed on the lead Korthok vessel. His weapons officer looked nervous. "Sir, that ship is 3 times our size. Their armor is twice as thick as ours." "Then we don't hit the armor," Oh replied calmly. "Target their engine cooling systems. Precision shots only. Remember, there are civilians in those cargo holds." The Hammerfall unleashed a barrage of carefully aimed plasma bursts. Instead of trying to destroy the massive slave ship, they surgically removed its ability to fight or flee. Within minutes, the vessel drifted helplessly as its systems shut down one by one. Meanwhile, Major Yang Su led her squadron of fighters in a deadly dance around the Korthak escorts. Her pilots had trained for fleet combat, but they adapted quickly to this new kind of warfare. Instead of destroying enemy ships, they targeted weapon systems and engines with surgical precision. "Phoenix leader to all fighters," Yang's voice cut through the chaos. "Remember your rules of engagement. Disable, don't destroy. Every ship you blow up might have prisoners aboard." Lieutenant Park So pulled her fighter into a tight spiral around a Korthok cruiser, her lasers picking apart its weapon turrets, one by one. The alien ship tried to track her movements, but humans had reflexes honed by millions of years of hunting prey that could fight back. On the bridge of the Korthok flagship, Commander Grixdel watched his formation crumble with growing disbelief. His claws scraped against his command throne as another escort ship went dark, its weapons destroyed but hull intact. "These aren't the soft council peacekeepers," he snarled at his tactical officer. "What are these creatures? His weapons officers?" Voice shook as he reported casualties. "Sir, we've lost 6 escorts and 3 transports are disabled, but they're not destroying anything. They're just ... stopping us." Grixdel had never encountered an enemy that fought to capture rather than kill his species, believed that showing mercy was weakness. But as he watched human ships move through his formation with wolf-like coordination, he realized he was facing something far more dangerous than simple aggression. He was facing humans who fought with both fury and restraint, creatures who could unleash devastating violence while never forgetting their ultimate goal. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to save lives. The boarding pod slammed into the Korthok transport ship like metal fists punching through paper. Inside the alien vessel, emergency lights bathed everything in hellish red as atmosphere hissed through the breach points. Sergeant Namho was the first through the airlock, his rifle sweeping left and right as he entered enemy territory. The Korthok Marines waiting for him stood nearly 8 feet tall, their reptilian scales gleaming under the emergency lighting. They carried plasma weapons that could melt through steel and war armor that had stopped bullets from a dozen different worlds. They'd repelled boarding parties before and felt confident about their chances. They'd never fought humans. Nam Ho moved through the corridor like water flowing around obstacles. His team followed behind him, each Marine covering different angles as they advanced deeper into the ship. The Korthok opened fire first, their plasma bolts lighting up the narrow hallway with deadly energy. But the humans were already gone, having rolled and dodged behind cover with movements that seemed impossible for creatures wearing heavy combat gear. "Corporal, you've been popped up from behind a maintenance panel and put 3 precise shots into a Korthak's weapon, disabling it without killing the wielder. How do they move so fast?" One of the alien Marines gasped as he watched his weapon spark and die in his claws. The answer lay in millions of years of evolution. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters on a death world where everything wanted to kill them. Their ancestors had chased prey across continents, adapting and learning from every encounter. Now their descendants brought those same instincts to the sterile corridors of an alien ship. Private Lee Hay sprinted down a side corridor, her boots barely making sound on the metal deck. She'd grown up playing tag with her brothers in the crowded streets of New Seoul. This was just a deadlier version of the same game. A Korthok soldier twice her size tried to intercept her, but she slid under his grab and disabled his weapon with a quick burst from her rifle. The Korthok had size and strength, but humans had speed and adaptability. In the narrow confines of their own ship, the aliens found themselves at a disadvantage. They'd built these corridors for creatures their size, not for smaller beings who could slip through maintenance shafts and pop out where least expected. Sergeant Nameho's voice crackled over the comm system as his team secured another section. Cargo hold 3 is clear. We've got 47 Zilani civilians here, including 12 children. They're scared, but unharmed. The sound of crying Zilani families being reunited drove the Marines forward with renewed purpose. Every door they breached, every corridor they cleared, brought more innocent people back to freedom. The hunters from Earth had found their prey. The Zilani homeworld's twin suns beat down mercilessly as Colonel Songhai's boots hit the dusty ground. Her dropship had landed in what used to be a peaceful farming valley, now scarred with burn marks from Korthok weapons. The air shimmered with heat that would have cooked most galactic species, but humans had evolved under Earth's punishing sun. Temperatures reading 48 degrees, reported Lieutenant Kim Do, wiping sweat from his forehead. The Zilani are barely surviving in this heat. Songhai nodded grimly. The peaceful farmers weren't built for extremes like humans were. They're delicate. Blueskin was already showing signs of heat stress after just hours of exposure. Meanwhile, her Marines moved through the scorching landscape like they were taking a walk in the park. A group of freed Zilani huddled in the shade of their destroyed transport, their large eyes filled with terror and hope in equal measure. One of them, an elderly farmer named Veltar, approached Songhai with trembling hands. "The sky demons have my granddaughter," he whispered, in broken standard. "Hidden place. Underground. Many children there." Captain Anbo emerged from a rocky outcropping, his camouflage gear blending perfectly with the alien landscape. His reconnaissance team had been scouting ahead, using skills learned in Earth's harshest environments. "Colonel, we've located another facility to clicks north. It's built into a canyon wall, heavily fortified." Songhai studied the tactical display on her wrist computer. The Korthok weren't just random raiders. They'd been planning this operation for months, building hidden holding facilities across the planet's most inhospitable regions. They'd assumed the harsh environment would protect them from rescue attempts. They'd never dealt with humans before. Private Park Jun crawled through a ventilation shaft that would have been impossible for larger beings to navigate. His small frame and flexible joints, products of human evolution, allowed him to reach places the Korthak never considered vulnerable. Through the metal grating, he could see rows of cages filled with Zilani children. "I've got visual on the prisoners," he whispered into his comm. "Estimate 60 juveniles, ages ranging from infants to teenagers." The sound of children crying through the comm system hit every Marine like a physical blow. These weren't soldiers or politicians. They were just kids who wanted to go home to their families. Songhai's voice carried clearly across the rocky terrain as she coordinated her teams. "All units, priority rescue. These children have been in cages long enough." Her Marines moved through the compound with deadly efficiency. Years of training in Earth's deserts, jungles, and mountains had prepared them for any environment. The Korthok guards found themselves facing creatures who could survive anywhere and fight anyone. Each freed child made them fight harder for the next one. Commander Grixtel stared at his tactical display in growing horror. Half his fleet drifted, powerless in space, their weapons destroyed but hulls intact. His ground forces had gone silent, one by one, as human Marines swept through his hidden compounds. In 30 years of raiding, He'd never faced an enemy like this. His communication officer's scales had turned pale with fear. "Sir, the humans are demanding our complete surrender. They're not asking for anything in return." Grixtel's claws scraped against his command throne. Every species in the galaxy wanted something. The Thurians demanded rare metals. The Vrex wanted territorial concessions. Even the peaceful Aquari expected trade agreements in exchange for mercy. But these humans seemed to fight for reasons he couldn't understand. "Open a channel to their flagship," he snarled. "All frequencies." Admiral Kimsu's face appeared on the main screen, her expression calm despite the battle raging around them. Behind her, human crew members worked with quiet efficiency, their movements precise and deadly. These weren't the panicked defenders Grixtel usually encountered. Human Commander Grixtel began, forcing his voice to remain steady. "You fight well, but this conflict benefits no one. Name your price and we can end this now." Kim tilted her head slightly, studying the alien commander with cold eyes. "Our price?" "Yes," Grixtel continued, sensing an opening. "Tribute, territory, exclusive trading rights. The Korthok Empire controls 17 systems. We can make you wealthy beyond imagination." Around the bridge, his officers nodded eagerly. This was how negotiations always went. Everyone had their price, and the Korthok had learned to pay it, rather than face costly battles. Kim's response came without hesitation. Her words transmitted across every communication frequency in the system. "We didn't come to trade. We came because it was right." The silence that followed stretched for long seconds. Grixtel's translator unit cycled through the words several times, as if trying to find a different meaning. His tactical officer leaned forward in confusion. "Sir, I don't understand their demands," the officer whispered. "What do they want from us?" On the human flagship, Captain Li Min shook his head in amazement. "Admiral, I don't think they understand what we're saying." Kim nodded slowly. The concept seemed foreign to the Korthok commander. His species had built an empire on the idea that everything had a price, that every conflict could be resolved through negotiation and payment. They'd never encountered beings who would risk their lives for strangers, who would cross the galaxy not for profit but for principle. "Commander Grixtel," Kim said finally, "you're going to release every prisoner, surrender your ships, and face trial for your crimes. Not because we want something from you, but because innocent people deserve to be free." The alien concept left the slavers speechless. The final Korthok compound sat like a black scar against the Zalani planet's golden landscape. Major Kongdu crouched behind a rocky outcropping, watching his demolition teams place charges along the fortress walls. This wasn't just another holding facility. Intelligence suggested it was the command center for the entire slaving operation. "Charges set, sir," reported Sergeant Wang Min over the comm, "ready to breach on your order." Kongdu raised his fist, then brought it down sharply. The explosions rocked the compound as sections of reinforced wall crumbled into dust. His assault teams poured through the gaps like water through a broken dam. Their weapons ready, but their primary mission clear. Find the prisoners. The corridors inside were different from the other facilities they'd liberated. These walls were decorated with trophies from dozens of worlds, alien artwork, precious metals, and personal items torn from countless victims over the years. But it was what they found deeper in the complex that stopped even veteran Marines in their tracks. Lieutenant Imso's voice crackled over the radio, her usual steady tone shaken. "Sir, we've found the fighting pits." Kongdu moved quickly through the twisting passages until he reached the central chamber. What he saw there would haunt him for the rest of his life. The arena was carved directly into the living rock, with rows of seats where Korthak officers had watched for entertainment. But it was the evidence scattered around the pit floor that made his blood turn to ice. Personal belongings from victims across the galaxy lay mixed with medical equipment designed not to heal, but to keep fights going longer. Chains and restraints, built for beings of all sizes, from massive Thurians, down to creatures no bigger than human children. Private Chowei emerged from a side chamber, his face pale. "Major, there are holding cells back here. Some of them are too small for adults." The pieces fell together in Kongdo's mind, like a horrific puzzle. This wasn't just about slavery or forced labor. The Korthok had been using prisoners for sport, forcing them to fight each other while their captors placed bets and cheered. His comm unit crackled as Colonel Songhei's voice came through from the surface. "Major, what's your status down there?" Kongdo looked around the chamber one more time, his jaw tight with controlled fury. "Ma'am, we've secured the facility. All prisoners have been evacuated safely." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Recommend we classify all command staff as non-surrendering combatants." There was a long silence before Songhei responded. She understood what he wasn't saying directly. Some crimes went beyond the possibility of trial or imprisonment. "Understood, Major. Handle it as you see fit." But humans had come to rescue innocents. What they'd found had transformed rescue into something far more final. 3 weeks after the last shot was fired, Captain Baek Jun sat in his quarters aboard the Steel Rain, composing the final mission report. Through his viewport, he could see Zalani farmers already returning to their fields, their blue skin bright with hope under the twin suns. Children who'd been locked in cages now played among the golden wheat stalks. "Final casualty report, sir." His aide handed him a datapad. 0 Zalani civilian deaths. All 4,847 prisoners recovered alive and returned to their families. Baek Jun nodded as he typed the numbers into his report. Not a single innocent life lost during the rescue. It had taken careful planning, precise execution, and Marines willing to risk everything to save strangers. But they'd done it. The Korthok slaving network in this sector no longer existed. 17 ships had been captured or destroyed. Their hidden facilities were now refugee centers, helping survivors recover. The command staff who'd run the fighting pits had been dealt with according to the laws of war across the galaxy. News of the human intervention spread through communication networks like wildfire. On the crystal homeworld of Zarian beings made of living mineral whispered about the Deathworlders, who'd crossed space to fight for justice. In the underwater cities of Aquarius, the jellyfish-like inhabitants sang songs about humans who chose mercy over profit. The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with nervous energy as species representatives tried to understand what they'd witnessed. Ambassador Chen Wei, who'd been recalled from Earth for questioning, stood before the assembly with quiet dignity. "You violated 17 different treaties," accused the Vrex delegate, his tree-like form rustling with agitation. "Intervention without council approval is strictly forbidden." Chen Wei looked around the chamber at faces that ranged from confused to terrified. "We saved 4,847 innocent lives. If that violates your treaties, then your treaties are worthless." The chamber erupted in arguments that would continue for months, but the damage was already done. Word had spread to every corner of known space that there was now a species willing to fight for principles rather than profit. On frontier worlds, where local governments couldn't protect their people, desperate colonists began sending messages. Toward Earth, slave traders operating in remote systems suddenly found their victims asking if the humans were coming. Pirates discovered that their usual targets now had hope where once there'd been only despair. Admiral Kim Soo received the final reports from her flagship as the human fleet prepared for the journey home. They'd accomplished something that would reshape galactic politics forever, not through conquest or negotiation, but through simple action. The universe had learned that humanity's greatest export wasn't advanced technology or valuable resources. It was hope, backed by unbreakable will and the fury of those who refused to let innocence suffer. The Terran Doctrine was born,